We're here with Jennifer Baker of Good Dads on a Live Life Well segment, and we're talking about something probably gives us nightmares from middle school, and that's peer pressure. Peer pressure. How do I do the right thing but still be part of the cool kids and the cool crowd, or at least my crowd?
You know, I think today the one way we talk about that is FOMO, fear of missing out, because that's what a lot of peer pressure is about. If I don't go to this thing, if I don't do these things, if I don't wear these clothes, then I'm going to miss out on the fun things that everybody else is having, and I don't want to miss out on anything. So I think that's where a lot of peer pressure comes into. I may not even want to do it that much, but if I feel like my friends are doing it or the cool kids are doing it, I don't even know if they say cool anymore, but you know, you got the idea, that then something bad's going to happen.
So as a parent, how do you negotiate this with your children? And as I recall, middle school was really the tough part of this curve.
Yeah. It can show its head in different ways a little bit later on, but I think in middle school, kids are often sorting themselves out, and in a lot of places, they come from different elementary schools into a middle school setting and just trying to figure out who's who and all of that. Well, I think there's one thing: you want to be sympathetic, you want to be compassionate. You got to remember what it was like to be 12 or 13 or 14 and want to be like everybody else. And you know, don't act like they ought to have the wisdom of your 30 or 40-some-year-old brain. They're 12, 13, and 14. So listening compassionately, like, yeah, that would be a lot of fun to do. I can understand why you would want to do that. That is not saying yes. That is saying, you know, I can understand why that's important to you, why you want to go to that party, or why you want to wear those particular clothes, or why you want to do that activity.
So being sympathetic. Listening. But I'm hearing from you that boundaries still need to come into play.
Yes.
And how does that look?
So then I think it's a good idea to have conversations about how that fits with our values. You know, as a family, we decided that we will all go to Grandma's house for her birthday. And I know that your friends are doing this, but as a family, and you know you love your grandmother, we've decided that we're going to do this. Or, I know you want to do this on vacation, but your younger siblings can't do that. So we're going to do this one day, but we're going to do some other things for them. So our value is cooperativeness. Our value is sharing. Our value is kindness. So asking questions like, well, how does that fit with what we all want to do and get out of this vacation, this family, whatever? Asking good questions. But then, of course, you need to remember that if you say that values are important, like it's important to be honest, then your kids better not hear you telling a lie. If you say that it's important to be kind and they witness you being unkind to a waitress or unkind to somebody in the family, then that just doesn't square. So when you're talking about values and what your child wants to do, you better look at yourself and how you exemplify or demonstrate those values.
So you have to live and breathe the values you're preaching.
Yes.
And I'm also hearing what I heard in another conversation, asking questions.
Yes.
So this becomes part of it. Say, how does this fit with the family as a whole? Or what do you think about going to Grandma's birthday party instead of the birthday party of your friend?
Your friend, or going skiing with them, or doing some activity. Well, you might say, you know, Sean, I know you love your grandma. How do you think she's going to feel if you don't come to her 70th birthday party? You know, I know, Maggie, that you really love your aunt so-and-so, and you two have a great relationship. So how do you think she's going to feel if you go to the sleepover and you miss this important thing in her life? So asking questions and saying it in a way like, I've always known you to be a kind person. I've always known you to have a good head on your shoulders. So I'm wondering what you think about this everybody else is doing this. You want this very expensive pair of shoes. How does that fit with, the other ways that you spend your money?
And one of the things that we haven't touched on is the difficult topics when it comes into peer pressure. Maybe somebody at 14 is trying drugs or getting into
drinking at a party
sex
or
drinking.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you, as a parent, you're hearing these types of things may be happening, what's the best way to go about that? Is the question route the way to go, or is it more the direct?
I think it's always good to start with questions.
Okay.
And so, I can remember having these conversations with my children, and I would say, well, what do you think about that? What do you think about this behavior, this activity? And listen to what they said. And then, after listening to what they said, then that might be a good time for you to say, I have some concerns about that. Now, I'm not saying that, and the third thing we should talk about is that sometimes you have to say no. You have to have the courage to say no. I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is what we're going to do.
What do you think about your friends experimenting with drugs? Well, I want to try it too.
Yep.
If that's the answer.
And if so, let's say, but I mean, honestly, you can't really prevent them from doing that. Unless you're going to follow them around and sit on their shoulder, which is unlikely.
Unfortunately, as a parent, you can't prevent everything.
Right.
Despite the guidance.
Well,
but let's say in that case, and we're dealing with a tough topic. If it's drugs, my friends are smoking marijuana.
Yeah.
And you don't want your 14-year-old smoking marijuana.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to think is, remember, a 14-year-old can do what a 14-year-old wants to do. And you really can't prevent them from doing something that they are intent upon doing. But you might start out the conversation with, wow, well, that sounds like something that you'd want to give a lot of thought. So why would you think about doing that? And what do you think they're thinking about doing it? So you want to have lots of conversation about why that is. And then you could say, I have a lot of concerns about that, and I hope you don't make that choice. It concerns me that you might be thinking about doing that because you've always had a good head on your shoulders, and I'm concerned that that might interfere with your thinking. And your brain's one of the best parts of you.
And it's developing right now.
And it doesn't sound like that would be a very good time for you to be experimenting. I mean, at the end of the day, you could say, well, I know that I can't prevent you from doing something entirely, but if it happens on my watch, while you're in my house or on our property, then there probably would be some pretty serious consequences.
So the hammer, and I'm going to call that the hammer.
Yeah, okay.
The hammer comes in much later in this process. Well, what do you think about that? And then you listen. So I'm kind of going back through this for the parents out there.
Yeah.
And then I don't agree with that, or I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't say something that you really can't enforce. Over my dead body, you're not going to do that, not in my house, because if you do that, you can't follow through on that.
Yeah.
And what you really want to do at this stage of the game is help them develop their critical thinking skills. Is that good for me? Would that be a good choice? And you talk to lots of adults today who'll say, yeah, I was in my stupid phase, or I made some poor choices. Most every adult today has made some poor choices at one time or another. But hopefully they weren't really huge choices that would interfere with, their future. And that's really what you want them to start thinking about. Do I really want to do this? Do I really want to get in the car with somebody who's been drinking and is now driving? That could have life-altering consequences. Do I really want to do that?
And on a different level, if your child is coming to you and there's the peer pressure and they really want to be part of this group. I don't have enough friends and I want to be part of this friend group and they're doing X, Y, or Z. It's that feeling of not only the FOMO, I'm going to miss
Yeah.
out on this friend group, but I need these friends. How do you negotiate that?
Well, I would want to understand what it is you like about these kids that you want to be friends with. Is it just that people would think of you in a different light if you hung out with these kids? Or are there kids that you would, I mean, you've got to be who you are, and so trying to help your child see that they're becoming their own person. So, for instance, our daughter is very tall. And because she's very tall, when she was in high school, people thought that she should play basketball, but she really had about zero interest in basketball. She was on the team for a couple of years, but then she really came into her own as an artist. And so she ended up in college going on and getting her degree in graphic design because she's so creative and so talented as an artist. But, you know, people don't come to art events. You know, they don't watch you. They don't sit in the stands and cheer. It's hard to get a group of friends together and do art.
Right.
Drawing and such. So, you know, there was a shift in friends at that time while she was finding her way from the kids who were the athletes to the kids who were more like her. And it was, you know, it was challenging that year, but she certainly negotiated that. So I guess that's what I want parents to think about. Sometimes you may need to put a little extra energy into providing your kids with opportunities to be with kids with things they enjoy. So if they enjoy karate, maybe you want to pay for karate classes. If they enjoy some sort of theater, maybe you want to invest your time and energy into that. So sometimes kids will get into an activity because they like those kids, but they don't really like the activity. So
Gotcha.
helping them be their own person, and that is a transition. And frankly, sometimes when we're in transitions and it's uncomfortable, we can be cranky. And so teenagers can be cranky, and just, you know, realizing this is not easy. And remember what you were like when you were 15, 16.
Yeah.
Not always the most controlled human being on the planet.
Yeah. Like you said, as an adult, you can think of things that were mistakes and you wish you hadn't done.
Yeah.
It sounds like part of the overall process here is really you have a better chance when it comes to peer pressure in children if you're present.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this is just being there, having a conversation. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, and you know, I would confess that I'm really more of a morning person, but one of our children was very much a night person. I was not always successful at this, but the more I could remember that I needed to just sort of be available at 9, 9:30, 10, 10:30, you know, later in the day, to have conversations, going into the room, sitting on the bed. Again, that wasn't always my best time, but also understanding that kids have if you really want to connect with them, you have to be present in their lives.
I think we could go on a lot more
We
about
could.
this topic. Do you think we covered it?
I think so.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Jennifer Baker, Good
Thank you.
Dads, on this Live Life Well.